rumors, receipts, and partnerships that stretched reality TV's boundaries are what write the history of love and hip-hop Atlanta. However, the turbulent tale of Kirk Frost, Rashida, and Jasmine Bleu sent shockwaves across the culture more than any of the explosive narratives that have shaken the franchise over the past 10 years. Fans believed they knew the whole story for years. We witnessed the tears, the DNA testing, the heated family sit-downs, and the public outcry that almost brought an end to one of the most well-known marriages in hip-hop. Every single secret seems to have been uncovered. However, Kirk Frost did the unimaginable right when it seemed like the dust had finally settled. In an uncommon and censored moment, he broke his silence and revealed fresh, long-kept secrets about his previous with Jasmine. This is more than a reenactment of an old reality TV show. This offers an entirely different viewpoint on what was going on behind the scenes when the cameras weren't rolling. Before the scandal became public, what actually pulled Kirk into Jasmine's social circle? What are the recently revealed specifics about their timeline that totally defy what we've seen on TV? Above all, what impact has this abrupt, startling admission had on Rashida and the delicate harmony the Frost family has laboriously restored? Today, we are revealing Kirk's most recent remarks, dissecting the timing changes, the unspoken financial connections, and the emotional fallout from an unexpected disclosure. The true story behind this reality TV horror is far more calculated than anyone could have ever thought, so stay tuned. In order to fully comprehend the significance of Kirk Frost's recent disclosures, we must go back to the time when the name Jasmine Bleu became associated with mayhem on reality TV. The story was portrayed on screen as an abrupt, unforeseen problem that caught the Frost family off guard. Kirk's most recent analysis, however, points to a considerably more nuanced reality for, implying that this connection's foundations were established far earlier than the general public was made to believe. Emerging information indicates that the first encounter wasn't a coincidental event in the thriving Atlantic club scene, but rather a meeting of paths closely related to the entertainment and music management industries that Kirk had worked in for many years. For years, Kirk worked as a seasoned manager and executive searching for the next great project in addition to being a reality star. Jasmine first appeared on the fringe of this fast-paced, professional setting. According to people close to the issue, Jasmine was trying to make her way into the entertainment business by looking for mentorship and leverage from well-known individuals who had the keys to the city's powerful urban nightlife and music circuits. Kirk allegedly met her on the pretense of possible business development and networking because he was constantly trying to broaden his portfolio and keep his position as an industry insider. The idea that this was a continuous association that existed in the background long before it became a television narrative point, rather than a transient, momentary failure in judgment, is what makes Kirk's new perspective so startling. The scenario was initially presented to the public as an isolated error resulting from transient vulnerability during a time of marital estrangement between Kirk and Rashida. However, the story's entire dynamic is altered by the new facts that depict an expanded timeframe. Every disagreement, altercation, and tearful exchange that subsequently appeared on national television is entirely recontextualized if these two people were sharing the same spaces and keeping in touch far earlier than previously acknowledged. This covert prelude laid a perilous groundwork. It is a ticking time bomb to operate covertly in a city as interconnected as Atlanta. According to Kirk's latest admission, the concern of concealing this link through started to permeate his daily existence, giving him a sort of dual identity. On the one hand, he was filming a successful television series and playing the devoted husband and business partner alongside Rashida, creating their retail empire. However, he was overseeing a subdued, unacknowledged relationship with Jasmine that was gradually becoming more intricate by the day due to. It is impossible to overstate how serious it is to keep such a secret in the digital age. Maintaining a secret history is almost impossible in a time when social media investigators may locate locations using a photo's background and mutual acquaintances, converse for influence. Kirk reportedly acknowledged that he was under tremendous strain since he knew that the worlds will eventually meet. The early days were marked by controlled, quiet, a series of unspoken agreements, and a shared awareness that the truth might swiftly destroy several lives, rather than the explosive wrath we witnessed on TV. The lines started to blur as this hidden link grew. What may have begun as informal industrial networking swiftly turned into self-sufficiency. As Jasmine became aware of Kirk's power and riches, she instinctively tried to strengthen her position, while Kirk, engrossed in the excitement of living in a different world from his growing marital obligations, let the situation get out of hand. This was more than a quick meeting. One of the biggest scandals in reality TV history began with a long, planned build-up. And as the hidden chronology became longer, disclosure became more inevitable, creating the conditions for a financial and emotional web that would soon ensnare all those involved. A notable discrepancy between reality and what is created on the screen is further highlighted by the mechanics of how this relationship evolved behind closed doors. Production businesses in the realm of reality television thrive on abrupt shocks, but the actual setup for those shocks requires months of quiet build-up. According to Kirk's most recent observations, Jasmine was learning the ins and outs of the music industry during this pre-fame stage, watching how public personalities ran their brands, and realizing the importance of being close to power. This dynamic was not innocent. It was a very conscious exchange in which both sides were aware of the dangers yet choose to disregard them in favor of instant satisfaction through. In addition, this longer timeline compels us to view Kirk's actions in those early Love and Hip Hop Atlanta seasons from an entirely new perspective. There was a hidden layer of stress behind his actions every time he battled with Rashida about their business decisions or defended his independence. He was frequently criticized by the audience for being defensive or disconnected, but we now know that a significant contributing factor to his defensiveness was his ongoing fear of being discovered. Knowing that a completely different chapter of his life was developing concurrently with his public persona caused him great stress. It also calls into question the network of individuals that surrounds them. Given the reputation for gossip in Atlanta's entertainment industry, it seems improbable that a relationship this lengthy went unnoticed by insiders. Kirk's recent statement raises the possibility that some people in their common surroundings may have revealed clues or tidbits of information, which would heighten the anxiety. Every industry event, every club appearance, and every studio session turned into a high-stakes balancing act where one mistake or one careless word could set off a domestic explosion. As the months passed, their communication style had to change to reflect the increasing danger. Open industrial locations gave way to tightly regulated private settings. The relationship changed from being a casual link to a liability that needed to be actively managed at this point. Kirk was no longer merely a buddy and mentor in the business world. He had gotten engaged in a situation that would have a significant impact on his business partnerships, marriage, children, and the secret was becoming too much to bear on one's own, and the appearance of control was eroding. This leads us to the tipping point where public exposure became the only remaining channel after private management failed. Kirk's capacity to keep the situation under control was quickly failing, and Jasmine's expectations were changing. The peaceful accords of the past would no longer be sufficient to keep the peace, and the stage was prepared for an inevitable conflict of interests. The high-stakes financial agreements and intense behind-the-scenes leverage that would characterize their next chapter were about to begin as this covert prelude, which had been constructed on planned movements and extended secrecy, came to an abrupt end. The interaction between Kirk Frost and Jasmine Bleu unavoidably changed, from a covert association into a web of intricate behind-the-scenes preparations, with the two foundation of their previous, constructed in secrecy and the illusion of control quickly eroding. The emotional betrayal, the screaming matches, and the startling discovery of a kid were all major plot points when the story first surfaced on national television. Kirk's recent comments, however, illuminates a part of the narrative that was either omitted from the final cut or generally ignored. Long before the world knew, their relations behind closed doors were characterized by tremendous financial and logistical leverage. A secret of this size quickly becomes a huge liability and stops being merely a private matter. Kirk's new information suggests that there were unstated expectations about financial support and lifestyle upkeep well before the cameras began rolling for that fatal season. Silence frequently carries a premium in the entertainment industry. Additionally, the balance of power drastically changes when a well-known person is frantic to preserve their reputation, marriage, and business assets. Suddenly, Jasmine was in control, knowing that the multi-million-dollar brand Kirk and Rashida had spent decades creating could be destroyed by a single public speech or social media post. These new disclosures indicate that Kirk tried to control the worsening circumstances by offering financial support, in an effort to keep the arrangement private, controlled, and apart from his everyday life. In order to keep the truth from leaking to the media or, worse, Rashida directly, this required negotiating covert transactions, finding lodging, and making sure Jasmine's material requirements were satisfied. It wasn't only about giving and helping. Prior to the official manifestation of the damage, it was a tactical attempt at damage management. According to reports, Kirk described how draining it is to balance these unstated costs, and the constant concern over paper trails, financial statements, and the possibility of complete collapse. However, as anyone who works with secrets is aware, short-term solutions seldom result in long-term ones. Jasmine's leverage was profoundly psychological as well as pecuniary. Because he never knew when the story might be sold to a large media outlet, Kirk lived in a state of perpetual anxiety. Every interaction between the two was transactional due to the obvious tension that existed behind the scenes. It was a tense business deal where the stakes were a family's existence and the currency was silence, rather than the idealized story frequently seen in tabloid rumors. When the Love and Hip Hop production team learned of the rumors, the situation got even more unstable. An industry center like Atlanta is teeming with tipsters, bloggers, and insiders searching for the next big scoop because reality television thrives on real, tragic conflict. The leverage dynamic shifted once more as soon as production started sniffing about the rumors. Kirk and Rashida were no longer the only ones who knew the secret. It was about to become public property. According to Kirk's recent music statement, he felt cornered after realizing that his attempts to keep the issue under control financially had failed and that the story was going to be twisted in a way he could no longer control. Kirk and Rashida's communication apparently became very tense during this hectic time. The pressure of approaching public exposure caused the agreements that had kept the secret protected for months to break. As Kirk rushed to minimize the inevitable damage, Rashida, confronted with the prospect of becoming a public figure under very contentious circumstances, started to consider her own future and long-term security. The realities of television production brought everything into the open, turning a private issue into a public spectacle, exposing the secret agreements, hush money, and silent promises. The logistical headache of handling this shift from a private secret to a public plot was not seen to the viewers on television. Kirk observes that the pressure from executives changes everyone's reality when a reality show chooses to implement a rollout of this magnitude. Kirk wasn't the only one attempting to defend his house. It was a production machine that required dramatic payoffs, conflict, and documentation. The places that were supposed to be private havens were transformed into movie settings, and the financial arrangements that were supposed to keep things quiet suddenly became proof. A double-edged sword was produced by this monetization of the problem. As Jasmine entered the reality TV market, the exposure gave her a platform and a source of income. However, it also took away Kirk's last chance to covertly correct his errors. The network, which controlled how and when Rashida would learn the truth, took control of the situation instead of the individuals. Kirk characterizes this stage as an extreme loss of control, when the demands of the show's narrative arc totally destroyed the financial systems he had put in place to save his reputation. In addition, Kirk's professional relationships outside of his marriage started to suffer as a result of the strain of upholding these secret arrangements. Other corporate endeavors, like music, inevitably suffer when resources are being redirected to handle a covert crisis. Because a large amount of his daily efforts was devoted to keeping silent, his emphasis on music management, retail expansion, and community investments was shattered. There was no trust in the highly poisonous environment that resulted from the constant negotiations about what could be spoken on camera and what needed to be hidden. The dynamic reached a point of complete weariness as the season got closer to its most intense episodes. The emotional toll was getting intolerable, and the financial leverage had reached its limit. According to Kirk's subsequent revelations, the encounter wasn't the start of the drama for him by the time it actually happened on television. It was the terrible end of a protracted, covert conflict that had already emotionally and financially exhausted him. The public backlash, the tragic family gatherings, and the contemporary consequences that the Frost family is still forced to deal with, all preceded the final breakdown of the secret. The immediate consequence was nothing short of disastrous when the floodgates eventually broke and the truth about Jasmine Bleu was broadcast to millions of viewers. We all recall the famous, devastating moments when Rashida confronted Kirk, the unadulterated feeling of a woman discovering that her years of devotion had been greeted with extreme deceit. The whole country weighed in on their personal suffering for a long time, giving the impression that the marriage was over. Despite all the obstacles, Rashida made the decision to forgive, in order to rebuild her family, preserve her tranquility, and save their shared economic empire. Because of this, Kirk's abrupt choice to speak up now and disclose these fresh, deeply ingrained details is extremely risky and shocking. It's risky to bring up the specter of a previous controversy, particularly if your partner has expressed a desire to move on and put the pain behind them. Tension in the Frost household has apparently been rekindled by Kirk's latest revelations. Even though Rashida has shown herself to be an extremely robust and business-minded lady, she is forced to endure the public humiliation all over again as old wounds are reopened in the public glare. According to industry insiders, Kirk's motivation for speaking out now is a desire to absolve himself of guilt and give context to a story that, in his opinion, only portrayed him as a villain without taking into account any outside pressures and manipulation he claims to have encountered during that difficult time. On social media, however, the public's response to Kirk's new information has been sharply mixed. A lot of fans believe that Kirk ought to have kept these secrets hidden forever, claiming that talking about Jasmine once more is extremely disrespectful to Rashida given everything she went through to maintain the family. Critics point out that fundamental betrayal cannot be justified by using a longer chronology or covert financial deals to explain away the past. It just emphasizes how well-planned the deception was from the beginning. Conversely, some viewers find the logistical realities of how these reality TV scandals are created and handled behind the scenes to be fascinating. Viewing Kirk's candor as a unique, honest look into the dark side of stardom. It is also impossible to overlook the effect on Jasmine Bleu. She is forced to return to the rigorous scrutiny of the reality TV fandom due to her past with Kirk dragging back into the spotlight. She has spent years trying to get over the overwhelming hostility that characterized her time on television, raise her child, and move on.